section of our introduction, which is a bit of intro to math. And so for a lot of you, this is probably a refresher. Depending on maybe how long ago you were in school, how much you've worked with math in your job that you either do now or have been doing. But we do go through some math this week. The exam, there is a math portion of the exam because a lot of our properties that we're testing and calculating for require us to do math. So I want to talk about rounding and then intro to the use of the calculators that we provide for this course. So rounding, we utilize the 5-up procedure, which is probably what I would say a lot of you are familiar with from school and maybe from your everyday life. And that's when the first digit discarded is less than 5, the last digit is retained. So if, for instance, you're rounding to the nearest whole digit, 2.4 becomes 2. Rounding to the nearest tenth, 2.43 becomes 2.4, and so on. The flip side of that is when the first digit discarded is 5 or greater, the last digit retained should be increased by 1 unit. And again, here the example is to the whole digit. 2.6 becomes 3, 2.56 becomes 2.6, and so on. You see below there. So again, it's pretty intuitive. I know previously, and maybe some other systems use something like an even odd type of procedure, but we utilize the 5-up procedure here. So here's some examples. These are similar to the examples that are in the handouts that you have and in the manual. But this is just an example of a single decimal place rounding. So we have the values on the left. We want to round to 1 decimal place. So 75.72 becomes 75.7. 16.38 becomes 16.4, and so on. Two decimal places is very similar. Again, we look at the first digit is the last digit less than 5 or greater, or 5 or greater. In this case, the 31.331. 1 is less than 5, so the second to the last digit stays the same at 31.33. This next one, 16.917. That final digit is greater than 5 or greater, so it becomes 16.92. The 1 becomes a 2, and so on here. All right, so the calculators. This picture here does not, the colors do not look the same as the calculators that you have now. Texas Instruments has updated their color scheme, but all the buttons are in the same place. And so we want to show you how to do some of the operations we're going to focus on this week on this TI-30X calculator. If you have your own calculator, you can use it that way. The question also comes up: can you determine the mean or the average utilizing division? Sure, you can, but I'll show you in a second why you want to do it this way for standard deviation. So the way to do this is you enter your data point, and there's a button on the calculator there on the left-hand side that says it's a sigma plus. And so what this does, it starts to put these values that you put in the statistical memory. Once you've put in the first value, the first data point, it should read n equals 1 on your readout. You then put in another data point and press the sigma plus key after each entry. And after the second one, it should say n equals 2. Third one says n equals 3, and so on until you've entered, whether you have 5 data points or 10 or 12 or however many you have, you keep going until you've entered in all your data. So to obtain the mean, then you press the second key up there in the top left, and then press the x squared key. What you're going for is above the x squared key there is a little symbol that says x with a bar over, x bar, and that's the symbol for mean. And so this is the one that I said you're really going to want to use this function of the calculator for, is standard deviation. So you don't have to re-enter all the data. It's still in there. After you've done your mean, you can hit second again and then press, it's on top of the square root key, but it actually has a lowercase sigma and then subscript xn minus 1. That is standard deviation. So press second and that key, and it will give you the standard deviation. Included in the manual is an example of the equation for standard deviation, which I guarantee you none of you want to do by hand. So take advantage of using that method in the calculator to calculate average and standard deviation. That comes into play when we are determining percent within limits. So I briefly want to walk through the manual that you have and really just touch on the chapters, similar order to what I talked about here a few minutes ago. Um, but I just want you to be familiar with it. Feel free to take notes, tabs, etc. in the manual. Find things you talk about this week. It'll come in handy during the exam. So at the front of the manual are kind of some before chapter 1 things like the list of instructors, the policies and procedures document. You should take a look at the policies and procedures document. It talks about the requirements for certification and becoming level 1, staying certified, and things like that. All right, starting with chapter 1, the introduction. So a lot of the things I just talked about, the purpose of the course, the QCQA, safety, rounding rules, things like that, you can find in chapter 1. Then moving on to chapter 2, again, we're going to talk about aggregates. So where do aggregates come from? Where do we get them in Indiana? And then how do we sample and test and determine the properties of those aggregates? Chapter 3 is we're going to talk about asphalt binder, the manufacture of asphalt binder, the testing of asphalt binder, and properties of asphalt binders that are relevant to the production of asphalt and making of hot mix asphalt. Chapter 4, asphalt volumetrics. That's where we talk about mix design and the volumetric properties that go into determining and developing that mix design and the volumetric properties that we use for testing of the finished product. Chapter 5 is asphalt plants, plant operation, and plant setup, etc. Chapter 6, audits, equipment calibration, quality control troubleshooting, lab equipment setup, etc. Chapter 7 is where we talk about our field testing and the percent within limits determination, how we calculate pay for QCQA hot mix asphalt. And then we have 3 appendices. We have Appendix 8, which is or Appendix A, Tab 8, which is our Indiana test methods. Appendix B, Chapter 9, Tab 9, which is our includes our audit checklist, the copies of those, and an example QCP, quality control plan, for a plant. And then Chapter 10, Tab 10, Appendix C, and that is an excerpt of our standard specifications. Our standard specifications is over 1,000 pages long, but not all of that is asphalt. So what we do is we extract the relevant pages and give them to you there for reference throughout the week, or throughout the course, I should say, as we go through different properties. So with that, thank you and good luck with this course and good luck on the exam.